the Nets star trio be able to get enough games together to make a prep and run for the playoffs? I'm not concerned with that talented trio, but we'll talk about it. And let's start in LA, though. Not only did all three Antetokounmpo brothers face each other, play on the court together, Giannis said later it was one of the best moments of his basketball life. But Andre Drummond made his Lakers debut and then promptly injured his toe. He said later his entire toenail came off by halftime. He missed the second half. The Bucks went on to win. Now, I will say Markieff Morris stayed optimistic post-game. Take a listen.
Should just make for a better ending. That's how we look at it. Everybody be back healthy. We're not worried about the toe. It just lines up for a great ending, a great, ride off into the sunset championship win again.
Now, a little later in that same press conference, Markieff said, hey, I hope the league knows that LeBron and AD are just resting up right now. I hope everyone knows what they're ready for. Zach, do you share Markieff's optimism here? Because, yes, they are still sort of safely in the middle of the West playoff bracket, but they only sit 4 games out of the play-in right now. And once you get into a single elimination or double elimination situation, anything can happen in a game or two, right?
Yeah, I'm with you, Rach. I'm totally confident in the Lakers if A, they're healthy when it matters, and B, they stay out of the play-in. And it's easy to say, well, who cares if they're in the play-in? They'll win the play-in. Anytime you're in a one-and-done or two-and-done situation, you are one big Zion game, one cold LeBron game, one twisted ankle away from being out of the playoffs, which would be a disaster. As long as they stay out of that, I share their optimism. I still think they should be considered the favorites. They've earned that. They've earned that benefit of the doubt. But they're not going to have a run now where they face an under 500 8 seed in the first round like they had last year. Right now, they're slated to go Denver, Utah, Clippers, or something like that just to get out of the West. And that is a murderer's row with no margin for error at all.
Well, Rachel, Markieff's sentiment of having it be a little bit better, have a better ending than they have right now, I sure hope that's the case for the sake of the league, but they're not the only team that is in this boat, right? There are plenty of teams that have these injuries to their star players that are looking around saying, when we get them back, when they come back, it's going to be a little bit different. But riding off into the championship for a sunset, as Zach just said, that's going to be a little bit more challenging. I can think of a handful of teams that may have something to say about that, even when Andre Drummond is healthy again, his toenail, I mean, I am a baby about a hangnail, so I can't imagine having my whole big toenail taken completely off. But even when he is healthy, when LeBron James is healthy, when Anthony Davis is healthy, there are other teams that are looking at the Lakers with a target on their back, even with those injuries. So riding off into the sunset, that's where I'm going to say maybe we're going to just need to pause for a second.
Well, I give Dre a lot of credit. He came and did media with us after the game, and he described in detail, friends, in great detail, how Brook Lopez, which is 285 pounds of human, landed on his foot, and then him taking off the shoe, taking off the sock, and revealing, as he put it, my toenail was gone. And Markieff Morris followed him in the press conference and mentioned he had a similar injury. He said now he was able to come back and play the next game. So we don't know what that means for Drummond, but hopefully he'll be able to come back and play with this. But as Markieff said, it hurt and affected him for about a month and a half. He said you don't realize how much your toe and the top of your toe scrapes your shoe and kind of is affected in all your basketball movements. So another injury bug issue for the Lakers. We will, of course, be following that. And let's talk about the Nets, because they had an injury scare of their own last night. James Harden leaving Brooklyn's win over the Rockets after 3 quarters due to a little tightness in that right hamstring. Now, the win did move the Nets to the top seed in the East, completely passing Philly. They've been sort of dancing around each other and tied for a while. Malika, what is the latest with James?
Well, James Harden, Rachel, has been ruled out tonight with that same right hamstring tightness. After the game yesterday, Steve Nash said that he felt confident that this wouldn't be a long-term injury. But for Nets fans, that can be a little bit triggering because they've heard that before with several key players, like with Kevin Durant, Landry Shamet. They said it wasn't going to be long-term. That was a week and a half that he was out with his ankle injury. He's also slated to return tonight. The sliver of good news, maybe, for Brooklyn is that LaMarcus Aldridge is slated to make his Nets debut tonight against against Charlotte. But remember, you guys both know James Harden is a player that you have to hold him back from being on the court. He takes so much pride in being consistently available for his teammates. When he hurt his neck earlier this month, Steve Nash said that he had to protect him from himself and hold him out for a game. So if James Harden has anything to say about it, I'm sure it's going to be a little bit of a battle for Steve Nash to hold him out for more than just a game, maybe two, because that's the type of player that James Harden is.
Yeah, James likes to play. Obviously, he's got an MVP campaign he's in the middle of. But the Nets as an organization, you understand why their instinct is to play it safe. They can. They have that luxury. They are still playing so well. And the idea is, of course, to be healthy for the playoffs. They've taken that strategy, of course, with the Kevin Durant injury. He's got that hamstring issue. They've only played 7 games where all KD, Kyrie, and James have taken the court together. That's just crazy. And as ESPN Stats and Info points out, every big three that has won a title going back to the 80s has played at least 42 games together during the regular season. So, Zach, they're certainly not going to get anywhere close to that 42-game number, but do you think whatever that number ends up being, they will have enough reps playing together before the playoffs?
I do. I'm shockingly unworried about this, considering I worry about everything like being struck by lightning when I walk out of my house. To me, the biggest thing that has happened in Brooklyn so far is that Kyrie Irving has given the offense to James Harden and said, hey, look, I'll be off to the side, setting flare screens. I'll run the show when you sit. I will get my 25, my 30 because I'm ridiculously efficient. That's already happened. And Kevin Durant is the most malleable, easy to fit superstar amplifier of other superstars, maybe in the modern history of the NBA. You just plug him in, he can set screens, he can post up, he can spot up. He just walks on the floor and gets 25 points without dominating the ball, without needing all that much action called for him. So to me, he's the easiest part, and the fact that the easiest part has been the one missing makes me optimistic that the Nets will be able to build enough momentum and enough sort of time together to make the run they want to make.
Rachel, I'm the self-anointed queen of worry.
I was going to say, I think of the three of us, we have the all-worry team on this show. I'm going to give the viewers a little delve into our personal lives. We're all friends, and I can tell you that we have the all-time worriers on the show today. You feel, though, Malika, you're not worried either, like Zach?
I think we should get T-shirts that say we're the all-time worry team. But yeah, I don't feel like I am worried about what they're going to be able to do, because Steve Nash had said since the get-go that Kevin Durant may be the key to making all of this work because he is the most versatile player. But then exactly what Zach said happened. James Harden has sort of taken over driving the offense, and Kyrie Irving and him have gelled so well together. What Steve Nash has said is, yes, we wish we had more time. We wish we had all season to be working on our chemistry and gelling, but we have so much talent that at this point, the only option we have really is to believe in it. And James Harden said that he's going to need to take the mentality of, we're trying to figure this out. This is a Rubik's Cube. We're going to need to figure it out on the fly. This is a team that already doesn't practice a whole lot, so they're going to be leaning into film and making it work, but the amount of talent they have gives them confidence. I've been told over and over again that this is going to be able to work when Kevin Durant comes back, which they're hoping is imminently.
Yeah, look, elite talent in this league trumps everything else. It's true when you have matchup situations in the playoffs. It's true when you have a matchup between a team and an injury situation. Kevin Durant historically comes back from injuries so sharp. We just haven't seen even major injuries he's come off of, any kind of slump or any kind of warming up. And then, of course, you have to also remember, KD and James played together for a long time. So I know that was a long time ago, but a shared history, an understanding of what the other wants to do on a basketball court, how they move, you don't lose that. So I don't think they're starting from scratch here, which is the other sort of key thing to remember when you're trying to make predictions about how all this is going to go. Now, we also have the new guys, right? Over the month of March, former All-Stars like Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, Andre Drummond, they've all made their way from buyouts to contenders. You got the Nets and the Lakers, of course, getting all the headlines there. Aldridge expected to make his Nets debut tonight. Even before these moves, as Kirk Goldsberry noted, nearly half of all active NBA players who've ever been named first team All-NBA now play for either the Lakers, Clippers, or Nets. So, Malika, do you think the way the buyout system now is working as it should?
Well, here's what I'll say, Rachel. I understand why maybe management, general managers in smaller markets are looking around saying, hey, wait a second, potentially this isn't fair the way that it is shaking out. Our Adrian Wojnarowski had a great piece about this on ESPN Plus today. And I want to read some numbers that I found just as striking as the numbers that you shared from Kirk Goldsberry just a second ago, that over the past 15 seasons, Rachel, 39 buyout players averaged 2 games and just 10 minutes in the playoffs, and 20 signed to top 15 markets, but the other 19, they signed to everywhere else. So actually it is shaking out to be a little bit more 50-50, but I do understand the frustration and the optics. And yes, this is a little bit of a loophole that maybe isn't working out as initially intended, but as Wojnarowski reported, this is something that, Zach, I'm sure you have more to say about this, should probably be addressed in the next looking at the CBA.
Well, look, in terms of addressing it, I haven't heard any solution that the players' union would ever go for, because the bottom line is this is about player movement and players being able to choose where they're going to go. So if you start limiting, like, you can't do this, you can't do that, the union is not going for that. Second of all, teams with cap space and trade exceptions and money to spend can already try to entice these players with more money than the glamour teams can offer them. The Knicks could have paid Andre Drummond like $12 million a year if they wanted Andre Drummond. And look, as Malika said, the buyout guys, they rarely have any impact on who wins the title anyway. We're blowing this way out of proportion, and they tend to go to good teams. Now, is there some overlap sometimes between good teams and glamorous cities? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But it's the quality of the team that matters. The other thing is, these teams don't have to buy these guys out. I don't buy the argument that small market GMs are out there cowering in fear of agents who are never going to forgive them for not buying out Andre Drummond. And on top of that, the league has incentivized bad teams to keep good players because they've flattened the lottery odds and created a play-in tournament. And the messaging of that is, San Antonio, if you think LaMarcus Aldridge is good, keep him. Cleveland, if you think Andre Drummond is good, yeah, you got Jared Allen, keep him anyway. And these teams are doing the opposite anyway, and the league has sort of incentivized them to keep those guys, and they're not doing it. And the other thing is, the last thing, we're hearing all this outrage this week about LaMarcus Aldridge in Brooklyn, Blake Griffin in Brooklyn, and blah, blah, blah. We're not hearing anything about Gorgie Dieng going to San Antonio, and we're not hearing anything about the Oklahoma City Thunder and Al Horford basically saying, hey, it's been nice having you. We're not going to buy you out. We're not going to trade you. We just don't want to win games, so why don't you just sort of become a coach for a little while? No one is outraged about that. No one is clamoring for Al Horford to get back on the court because it's a small market team in Oklahoma City that is the victim of this larger thing. I just think this is being blown way out of proportion.
Well, there's been a backlash, right? So there's a lot of fans who have said, huge backlash. The Nets are loaded up. This isn't fair. Here we go again. Another super team, and then it's boring. We know who wins. We can't really follow the games in the same way. And then there's been a backlash to the backlash. You've had a lot of people who cover the NBA saying, these fans, they don't understand. Guys don't really impact the finals, or they don't really impact the playoffs in that same way. And I think maybe what the initial fans who are upset, what they're feeling is, it's kind of like getting an SAT tutor, right? If you get an SAT tutor when you're in high school to get into college, that's not going to make the difference about whether you get into college or not. If you don't study yourself for the SATs, you won't do well. SATs are just one part of your college admissions package. So it's not the thing, kind of like Blake Griffin is not the thing that is going to win you the NBA title. But if you are a kid who has had every advantage, every privilege, have grown up going to the best schools, surrounded by the best people with the best books and the best tutors, and then you get the SAT tutor also, I understand people being like, come on, don't you already have everything else? And I think that's what fans sometimes are feeling with this. It's not that fans are just so casual. They don't understand that Blake Griffin isn't the Blake Griffin of 5 or 7 years ago. I think there is just some frustration in some markets, and that's why you are not hearing this about Gorgie or anyone else, of just, don't they already have enough? Do they have to have that too? And that is a balance the NBA is going to have to get into a little bit as we go. All right, guys, coming up on this show, what we will get into, it's April Fool's, right?